The muffled scream of Sister Maria echoed in the convent's kitchen, shattering the silence of dawn. Edann stood paralyzed, with water dripping from his semi-naked body and panic growing in his chest. The nun, with wide eyes and flushed cheeks, struggled to look away from the young man. "Edann, what are you doing here?" stammered Sister Maria, her voice trembling between surprise and indignation. The young man, tall and muscular, with dark skin glistening with water, tried desperately to cover himself with his hands, but it was futile. His secret, the cause of so much shame and pain, was exposed to the nun's incredulous eyes. I'm so sorry, sister," Edann mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. "I thought there would be no one here this early. I just wanted to clean up before everyone woke up." The sound of approaching footsteps made both of them freeze. The kitchen door burst open, revealing Sister Asa, who stopped dead in her tracks at the scene before her. "What's going on here?" exclaimed Asa, her gaze jumping between Edann and Sister Maria. Panic seized Edann. In a matter of seconds, his mind replayed all the times he had been mocked, stared at with disgust, and rejected. He felt his world crumbling around him. Without a second thought, Edann ran out of the kitchen, pushing Asa in his haste to escape. He ran through the convent's corridors, water dripping from his body and leaving a wet trail behind him. "Edann, wait!" cried Asa, but her voice was lost in the distance. Edann didn't stop until he reached the convent's gardens. The cold morning air hit his damp skin, making him shiver. He fell to his knees among the rose bushes, his breathing ragged and punctuated by silent sobs. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Sister Maria tried to explain the situation to a confused and worried Asa. "Sister Asa, what you just saw? It's a delicate matter. Edann has a condition, one that has caused him much suffering," explained Sister Maria, choosing her words carefully. Asa frowned, trying to process the information. A condition? What kind of condition could cause such distress? Before Sister Maria could respond, a sharp scream resonated from the gardens. Both nuns looked at each other alarmed before rushing towards the source of the sound. Upon reaching the gardens, they found a chaotic scene. Edann stood, still semi-naked, in front of a group of novices who had come out for their morning meditation. The young women looked at him with a mix of horror and fascination, while Edann seemed on the verge of a nervous breakdown. "Stay away from me!" Edann screamed, his voice cracked with panic and shame. "I'm a monster!" Sister Maria stepped forward, extending her hands in a calming gesture. "Edann, please calm down. No one here thinks you're a monster." But Edann was no longer listening. His eyes, filled with fear and desperation, frantically scanned the garden for an escape. In a sudden impulse, he lunged for the gate that led to the street. "No, Edann!" shouted Asa, running after him. But it was too late. Edann had disappeared into the streets of Lagos, leaving behind a convent in shock and a secret that could no longer be kept hidden. Sister Maria turned to the stunned novices. "All of you, return to your rooms. Now." Her voice brooked no argument. As the young women withdrew in silence, Asa approached Sister Maria, her eyes full of concern. "Sister, what are we going to do? Edann is out there, alone and vulnerable." Sister Maria closed her eyes for a moment, offering a silent prayer. When she opened them, her gaze was filled with determination. "We must find him, Asa. And when we do, we'll have to face the truth, all of us. It's time for Edann to stop living in the shadows." As the two nuns prepared to set out in search of Edann, they could not imagine the trials and revelations that awaited them on the chaotic streets of Lagos. Edann's secret had been exposed, and with it, a series of events had been unleashed that would forever change life in the convent and beyond. Sister Maria took a step forward. "It's time for all of us to know the truth, Edann. Not to judge you, but to understand and support you better." Edann took a deep breath, gathering all his courage. With a trembling voice at first, but gaining strength as he spoke, he began to tell his story. He spoke of his condition, how it had affected every aspect of his life, the constant fear of rejection, and the shame that had consumed him for years. As he spoke, he saw tears in the eyes of some of the nuns. Others nodded with understanding. And in the faces of everyone, he saw one thing he never expected to see: acceptance. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. Then, to Edann's surprise, Sister Lucia, known for her strict adherence to the rules, took a step forward. "Edann," she said with a voice broken by emotion, "I ask your forgiveness. Forgiveness for the times I judged you without understanding, for the times I mistook your reserve for arrogance. Now I see the strength you have shown all these years." One by one, the members of the community approached Edann, offering words of support, hugs, and promises of help. The young gardener, who had felt like an outsider for so long, suddenly found himself at the center of a circle of love and acceptance. However, not everyone was completely convinced. Father Thomas, who had been watching silently, finally spoke. "This is unusual," he said cautiously. "Edann, your condition raises certain questions about your place in our community. Perhaps it would be better if—" "No, Father," Sister Kofi interrupted firmly. "Edann has demonstrated his worth and his faith beyond any doubt. If his presence here makes some uncomfortable, then it is an opportunity for all of us to grow in compassion and understanding." Father Thomas frowned but did not argue further. It was clear that most of the community supported Edann. Asa, who had been watching everything silently, approached Edann and took his hand. "I am proud of you," she whispered. "I always knew you were special, Edann. Now everyone sees it." Edann felt his heart race at Asa's touch, a feeling he had suppressed for so long out of fear of rejection. Could he now allow himself to dream of something more? Sister Maria, noticing the exchange between Edann and Asa, quickly intervened. "I think it's time for Edann to rest. It's been a very intense morning for everyone." As the group began to disperse, Sister Kofi approached Edann once more. "Remember, my son, that God makes no mistakes. Your path may be different, but no less valuable. Now go and rest. Tomorrow will be a new day, full of possibilities you never imagined." Edann nodded, overwhelmed by emotions. As he walked back to the convent, escorted by Asa and Sister Maria, he felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. His secret no longer imprisoned him. However, as he walked, he couldn't help but wonder, what would this mean for his future? How would his life change now that everyone knew his truth? And more importantly, what did these new feelings he was discovering for Asa mean? The sun shone brightly over Lagos, promising a new beginning. But with that new beginning would come new challenges, new questions, and perhaps an opportunity for the love Edann had never allowed himself to hope for. The following days in the convent were a whirlwind of emotions and changes for Edann. The news of his condition had spread quickly, and although most treated him with a new understanding and respect, some still looked at him with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. One morning, while Edann was working in the garden, he noticed a group of novices watching him from afar, whispering among themselves. He felt his old fear beginning to resurface, but then Asa appeared by his side. "Ignore them," she said firmly. "They are just trying to understand. In time, they will see the real Edann, as I always have." Edann smiled gratefully at her, but he couldn't help but notice how his heart raced every time Asa was near. These new feelings scared and excited him in equal measure. Meanwhile, in Father Thomas's office, a heated discussion was taking place. Sister Maria and Sister Kofi were facing off against the priest, who still had reservations about Edann's situation. "I understand that you want to support him," Father Thomas said, "but we must consider the impact on the community. Some benefactors have expressed concerns." Sister Kofi frowned. "Concerns? About a young man who has shown nothing but dedication and kindness? Father, if our benefactors value appearances more than the heart, perhaps we should rethink our alliances." The tension in the room was palpable. Sister Maria intervened, seeking a compromise. "Maybe we could organize a meeting, allow Edann to speak directly with those who have doubts, show them the positive impact he has on our community." Father Thomas considered the proposal for a moment before nodding slowly. "Very well. But if this does not resolve the concerns, we will have to consider other options." Meanwhile, Edann was facing his own internal challenges. One afternoon, while watering the plants in the greenhouse, Asa approached him with a serious expression. "Edann, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. "Since you revealed your secret, I have been struggling with my own feelings." Edann felt his heart stop. Was Asa going to reject him now that she knew the whole truth? "I have always admired you," Asa continued. "Your strength, your kindness. But now, knowing everything you've been through, I realize that what I feel is more than admiration." Edann's eyes widened, barely daring to believe what he was hearing. "But I'm afraid, Edann," Asa confessed. "Afraid of these feelings, of what they mean for my vows, for our future." Edann put down the watering can and approached Asa, taking her hands in his. "Asa, I have also been struggling with similar feelings. I never thought I could allow myself to feel this way about someone." Just as it seemed they were about to grow closer, Father Thomas's voice echoed from the entrance of the greenhouse. "Edann, Sister Asa, I need to speak with you, now." The couple quickly separated, their hearts pounding. Had Father Thomas seen their intimate moment? What consequences would this bring? They followed the priest to his office, where Sister Maria and Sister Kofi were already waiting. The tension in the room was palpable. "We have decided to organize a meeting," announced Father Thomas. "An opportunity for Edann to speak directly with those who have doubts about his presence here." Edann felt panic beginning to take hold of him. The idea of exposing himself even more, of having to justify his existence to strangers, terrified him. Asa, noticing his distress, spoke up. "Father, is this really necessary? Edann has already proven his worth 1,000 times over." Sister Kofi intervened. "I agree with Asa. This feels like an unnecessary trial." Father Thomas raised a hand to silence the protests. "The decision is made. The meeting will take place in a week. Edann, this is your opportunity to secure your place here once and for all." As they left the office, Edann felt overwhelmed. Not only would he have to face the scrutiny of strangers, but now he also had to deal with his growing feelings for Asa and the complications that would bring. That night, as he lay in bed unable to sleep, Edann wondered if he would ever find true peace and acceptance. The week ahead promised to be one of the most challenging of his life, and the outcome could change his future forever. The days leading up to the meeting were a whirlwind of emotions and preparations. Edann divided his time between his duties in the garden and preparation sessions with Sister Maria and Sister Kofi, who helped him organize his thoughts and practice how to express himself before a potentially hostile group. One afternoon, while Edann was practicing his speech in the garden, Chidi, one of the youngest novices, approached timidly. "Edann," said the young man, "I've been thinking a lot since we all learned about your situation." Edann tensed, preparing for another awkward comment or invasive question, but Chidi surprised him. "I wanted to thank you," the novice continued. "Your bravery has made me reflect on my own secrets and fears. You have inspired me to be more honest with myself and with others." Chidi's words deeply touched Edann. For the first time, he realized that his personal struggle could have a positive impact on others. This revelation gave him a new purpose and determination for the upcoming meeting. Meanwhile, Asa was grappling with her own dilemmas. Her growing feelings for Edann filled her with confusion and guilt. One night, unable to sleep, she sought the advice of Sister Kofi. "Sister," Asa confessed, tears in her eyes, "I think I've fallen in love with Edann, but my vows, my devotion to God, how can I reconcile these feelings?" Sister Kofi listened with compassion. "Love, in all its forms, is a gift from God," she said softly. "But we must be cautious in how we express and act upon it. Your path will not be easy, Asa, but you must be honest with yourself and with God." The day of the meeting arrived with palpable tension in the air. The main hall of the convent had been prepared to host the benefactors and influential community members. Edann, dressed in his best clothes, waited nervously outside the room. Just before entering, Asa approached him. Without a word, she took his hand and squeezed it gently, conveying strength and support. That simple gesture filled Edann with a calm he hadn't felt in days. As he entered the room, Edann faced a group of serious and scrutinizing faces. Father Thomas briefly introduced him before yielding the floor. Edann took a deep breath and began to speak. His voice, trembling at first, gained strength as he shared his story. He spoke of his struggle, his shame, but also of how the convent had become his home and family. He described how his condition, though difficult, had made him more empathetic and understanding of others' suffering. "I did not choose to be born this way," he said firmly, "but every day I choose to be the best version of myself. I choose to serve this community, God, and my brothers and sisters with all my heart." As he spoke, he noticed some faces softening, some eyes filling with tears, but others remained impassive, their expressions unreadable. When Edann finished, there was a moment of tense silence. Then, one of the benefactors, an older man with a stern appearance, stood up. "Young man," he said gravely, "I have listened to your words attentively. I confess I came here with many doubts and concerns, but I see before me a man of extraordinary faith and courage. If the convent can produce individuals like you, then it has my full support." A murmur of approval swept through the room. Several others expressed similar sentiments, praising Edann's strength and dedication. However, not everyone was convinced. An elegantly dressed woman stood up. "While his story is moving," she said coldly, "should we not consider the example this sets? What message are we sending by allowing someone with such an unusual condition to hold a position of influence in our community?" Her words sparked a heated discussion. Some passionately defended Edann, while others voiced concerns similar to the woman's. In the midst of the debate, Edann remained silent, his heart pounding. His future, his home, hung by a thread. And as he observed the faces around him, some friendly, others hostile, he realized that regardless of the outcome, his life would never be the same. The debate in the room intensified. Voices rose, some in passionate defense of Edann, others expressing doubts and concerns. Father Thomas tried to maintain order, but the tension was palpable. Suddenly, the door to the room burst open. Everyone turned to see Chidi, the young novice, enter, followed by a diverse group of people from the local community. "Excuse the interruption," Chidi said, his voice trembling but determined, "but there are people here who need to be heard." An elderly woman stepped forward. "My name is Amina," she said. "Edann saved my small garden when a plague was destroying my crops. Thanks to him, I was able to feed my family that year." Another man, with visible scars on his arms, spoke. "I am Kofi. Edann helped me overcome my addiction. He never judged me for my scars. He showed me that I still had worth." One by one, community members shared stories of how Edann had helped, inspired, or supported them in some way. Each story revealed a different aspect of Edann's kindness and positive impact on others' lives. The room fell silent, absorbed in these revelations. Edann, overwhelmed with emotion, could barely hold back his tears. Sister Kofi stood up, her presence imposing despite her advanced age. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said clearly and firmly, "we have been discussing Edann's value based on his physical appearance, but these people have shown us his true value, his heart, his compassion, his ability to make the world a better place. Isn't that what truly matters?" A reflective silence fell over the room. Even those who had expressed doubts seemed to be reconsidering their positions. Finally, the benefactor who had first spoken in support of Edann stood up again. "I think we have heard enough," he said. "I propose that we vote now on whether Edann should remain in the convent." Father Thomas nodded, though concern was visible on his face. "Very well. All those in favor of Edann staying, raise your hand." There was a moment of tension as hands began to rise. Edann held his breath, his future hanging by a thread. To his amazement and relief, he saw more and more hands going up, including those of some who had initially expressed doubts. "The majority has spoken," declared Father Thomas. "Edann will stay." A spontaneous applause erupted in the room. Asa, unable to contain her joy, ran to Edann and hugged him tightly, forgetting for a moment where they were and who surrounded them. When they finally separated, both noticed the surprised looks around them. Father Thomas observed them with an inscrutable expression. "I believe we have more than one matter to discuss," said the priest quietly. As the meeting dissolved and people began to leave, congratulating Edann and expressing their support, he realized that although he had won this battle, challenges still lay ahead. His relationship with Asa, the community's expectations, his own journey of self-acceptance, all of this was just beginning. That night, as Edann prepared to sleep, he heard a soft knock on his door. It was Asa. "I couldn't go to sleep without talking to you," she said, her eyes shining with a mix of joy and concern. "Edann, what happened today? Changes everything." Edann nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "I know, Asa, my feelings for you." Before he could finish, Asa put a finger to his lips. "Shh," she whispered. "We don't need to resolve everything tonight. For now, I just want you to know that I'm here, that I'm with you, no matter what." They looked at each other in silence for a moment, the air charged with unspoken emotions and future possibilities. Finally, Asa leaned in and kissed Edann softly on the cheek before retreating. Edann stood at the door, touching the spot where Asa's lips had brushed his skin. His heart pounded, filled with hope and fear for what was to come. As he lay down, Edann reflected on the day's events. He had faced one of his greatest fears and emerged victorious. The community had accepted him, not despite his difference, but partly because of it. And with Asa, he felt a new chapter in his life opening, both exciting and terrifying. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Edann looked at it with hope. He closed his eyes, allowing himself to dream of the possibilities that tomorrow might bring. The days following the meeting brought a tense calm to the convent. Edann noticed curious glances and whispers as he passed, but they were now accompanied by kind smiles and gestures of support. However, the true storm was brewing within him. One morning, while Edann was working in the garden, Father Thomas approached him. His expression was serious, almost somber. "Edann," said the priest, "we need to talk about your situation with Sister Asa." Edann's heart raced. He had feared this conversation since the moment Asa hugged him in front of everyone. "Father, Edann began, but the priest raised a hand to silence him. "It's not just about you, Edann. Asa has taken sacred vows. What is happening between you could have serious consequences for both of you and for the entire community." Edann nodded slowly, feeling the weight of Father Thomas's words. "I understand, Father. What do you suggest we do?" The priest sighed deeply. "For now, I think it's best to keep some distance, at least until we can discuss this further with Sister Kofi and the convent council." As Father Thomas walked away, Edann remained motionless, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. The idea of distancing himself from Asa hurt deeply, but he understood the gravity of the situation. That afternoon, Edann sought out Asa to share the conversation he had with Father Thomas. He found her in the chapel, deep in prayer. "Asa," he called softly. She turned, and seeing his expression, she immediately knew something was wrong. "Father Thomas spoke with you, didn't he?" Asa asked, her voice barely a whisper. Edann nodded, sitting beside her on the chapel bench. "He says we need to keep our distance, at least for now." Asa closed her eyes, a solitary tear rolling down her cheek. "I know. I've been praying, seeking guidance. Edann, my feelings for you are real, but my vows—" "I understand," Edann said, though each word pained him. "I don't want to cause you conflict, Asa. Maybe this is a sign that we need to reconsider things." Asa looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of love and pain. "Maybe. But Edann, I can't just turn off what I feel. I need time to think, to pray." They looked at each other in silence for a moment, the air heavy with unspoken emotions. Finally, Edann stood up. "I'll give you the space you need, Asa. But I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you." As Edann left the chapel, he felt as if he was leaving a part of his heart behind. The following days were a test of strength for both of them. They passed each other in the convent halls, exchanging meaningful glances but keeping the agreed distance. The tension did not go unnoticed by the rest of the community. Rumors began to circulate, and soon everyone in the convent was speculating about the nature of Edann and Asa's relationship. One afternoon, while Edann was working in the community garden outside the convent, Chidi approached him. "Edann," said the young novice, "I've noticed that you and Sister Asa are no longer spending time together. Is everything all right?" Edann sighed, putting the hoe aside. "It's complicated, Chidi. Sometimes doing the right thing means making sacrifices." Chidi nodded thoughtfully. "You know, before I came to the convent, I was in love. I thought I would have to choose between that love and my vocation, but a wise priest once told me that true love, in all its forms, brings us closer to God, not away from Him." Chidi's words resonated deeply with Edann. Was it possible that his feelings for Asa were not an obstacle in his spiritual path, but an integral part of it? As he pondered this, he saw Sister Kofi approaching with a determined stride. Her expression was serious, but there was a glint of determination in her eyes. "Edann," said the elderly nun, "the council has been discussing your situation and Asa's. We've come to a decision, and we need to talk to you, to both of you." Edann's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment he had been both dreading and longing for. As he followed Sister Kofi back to the convent, he wondered what the future held for him. Would he have to choose between his home at the convent and his love for Asa? Or would there be a way to reconcile both aspects of his life? With each step toward the council room, Edann felt he was approaching a turning point in his life. Whatever the council's decision, he knew that nothing would ever be the same. And as he opened the door to the room, where Asa was already waiting along with Father Thomas and other council members, Edann took a deep breath, preparing to face his fate. The tension in the council room was palpable. Edann and Asa sat side by side, their hands almost touching but not daring to close the distance. In front of them, Father Thomas, Sister Kofi, and other council members watched them with solemn expressions. Father Thomas was the first to speak. "Edann, Asa, we have deliberated long and hard about your situation. It has not been an easy decision, but we believe we have found a solution that honors both your feelings and your commitments to the community." Edann held his breath, preparing for the worst. Asa, beside him, closed her eyes in silent prayer. Sister Kofi spoke next. "We have witnessed the love that has blossomed between you. A love that, far from distancing you from God, seems to have brought you closer to Him and to our community. However," Father Thomas continued, "we are also aware of the vows Asa has taken and the commitment you both have to our order." There was a tense pause before Sister Kofi continued. "Therefore, we have decided to offer you an unconventional option. Edann, we offer you the opportunity to formally join our order as a lay brother. And Asa, we give you the option to reconsider your vows, allowing you to choose a path that may include a relationship with Edann." Surprise was reflected on Edann and Asa's faces. This was not the sentence they had expected. "But," Father Thomas warned, "you must understand that this path will not be easy. The community will be watching you closely. You will need to demonstrate that your love is not only compatible with your faith, but that it strengthens it." Edann and Asa looked at each other, a mix of hope and fear in their eyes. "We will give you time to reflect on this decision," Sister Kofi concluded. "Remember, whatever your choice, you will always have a home here." The following days were a whirlwind of emotions and deep reflections for Edann and Asa. They spent hours in the chapel, seeking divine guidance. They consulted with Sister Kofi and other trusted community members. One afternoon, while walking through the convent garden, the place where it all began, Edann took Asa's hand. "I've been thinking a lot," he said softly. "About us, about my place here. Asa, this convent, this community, accepted me when no one else did. It gave me a home, a purpose, and now it has given me something I never thought I would have: love." Asa looked at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Edann, my vows have always been important to me. But what I feel for you, it's like God has opened my eyes to a new way of serving Him." They stopped in front of a rose bush that Edann had planted years ago. The roses were in full bloom, their beauty a testament to the care and dedication Edann had invested in them. "I think I've made my decision," Edann said, his voice firm but gentle. "I want to join the order as a lay brother. I want to continue serving this community, cultivating not only these flowers, but also the love and understanding among all of us." Asa smiled, a mix of joy and relief on her face. "And I have decided to reconsider my vows, not to abandon them, but to adapt them. I want to continue serving God and this community, but I also want to do it by your side, Edann." They embraced, there in the middle of the garden, feeling as if a huge weight had been lifted off their shoulders. It would not be an easy path, they knew, but they were willing to walk it together. The following months brought many changes to the convent. Edann took his vows as a lay brother in an emotional ceremony, with the entire community present. Asa, for her part, worked with Father Thomas and Sister Kofi to redefine her role in the order, finding a way to honor her original vows while embracing her love for Edann. News of their story spread beyond the convent walls. Many saw in Edann and Asa an example of how love and faith could coexist and strengthen each other. The convent began receiving visits from people seeking advice and hope, many of them struggling with their own differences and challenges. Edann and Asa, with the support of the community, established a community outreach program. Using the garden as a base, they began teaching not only about plants and cultivation, but also about acceptance, love, and faith. The garden became a symbol of growth and transformation, both for the plants and for the people. One afternoon, years later, Edann was in the garden, teaching a group of young people. Asa watched him from a distance, a warm smile on her face. "Come," Edann said to a shy girl, "let me show you something." He led her to the rose bush that had witnessed so many important moments in his life. "Do you see these roses? Each one is unique, different in its own way, but together, they form something beautiful. That's how we all are." As the girl gently touched the petals, Edann looked towards Asa. Their gazes met, filled with love and gratitude for the journey they had traveled together. Edann realized then that his secret, the thing that had once caused him so much shame and pain, had become the seed of something beautiful. He had not only found acceptance and love, but had also helped create a space where others could do the same. As the sun set over the convent, bathing the garden in a golden light, Edann understood that he had found something more than a home or a purpose. He had found a way to transform his difference into a gift that he could share with the world. And so, in that garden that had seen both plants and love bloom, Edann and Asa continued their journey, cultivating not only flowers, but also hope, acceptance, and faith in everyone around them. Edann's story reminds us that our differences can be our greatest strength. In a world that often fears the unknown, the courage to accept ourselves and others can transform lives. Have you been moved by Edann's journey? Have you ever felt different, misunderstood, or rejected? We all have a story to tell, a lesson to share. We invite you to be part of this community of acceptance and love. Share in the comments how Edann's story has touched your life or what your own journey to self-acceptance has been like. Together, we can create a garden of understanding and mutual support. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire and transform. And remember, like Edann's roses, each of us is unique and beautiful in our own way. Cultivate love, spread acceptance, and let hope bloom in your community.